G'day and welcome to KrakenCast. This is the oceanic branch of the Vassals of Kingsgrave's Game of Thrones review series. Today we will be discussing episode 5 of season 5, entitled Kill the Boy. My name is Duncan, or Valkyrist on the forums, and joining me today from New Zealand we have Joseph.
G'day, I go by Chow Gamer on the forums.
And from Indonesia we have Silvana.
Hi, Silvana, Silverbri in the forums.
Well, welcome back guys. Thanks for coming on to this second KrakenCast for this season. Shall we jump straight into lemon cakes? Joseph, would you like to start?
Yep, sure. On the whole, I was pretty impressed with the episode. Like, when I compare it to last week, I'm not sure it's as good, but it's so close, I really can't justify giving it anything lower. So yeah, 3.5 again for me. It was great to see lots of Stannis, so I'm happy.
Yes, the Stannis supporters were very pleased with this episode, I imagine.
It's about time they're starting to get a Stannis I can like. Early
Yeah.
Stannis was infuriating. Now I'm much more on board.
He's so good this season, I love it. What about you, Silvana?
Oh, well, I got a surprise for you guys. I gave it 4 lemon cakes. Yay!
Oh my god.
Oh my god! I know, I'm surprised with myself, like, seriously.
Abandon your posts.
I don't know, maybe I become Zen, for Game of Thrones. I was like, okay, I just enjoy the ride without thinking too much, maybe.
Yeah.
4 lemon cakes, oh god. I was expecting myself to tweet to Brian Cockman on Twitter, protesting all the changes, but I did not.
You had your Twitter account ready.
Yes, both my Twitter accounts.
Your pen dipped in blood.
But I think it's a very solid episode. And there are not too many places. So it's more focused, and I think the writing is very, very good. And I only have a few nitpicks, but not too much. So I'm pretty happy with myself and the episode as well. Hopefully they can keep up.
Yeah, I guess for me, this felt like the most A Dance with Dragons-esque episode to date, despite all the changes, because it was all about the North and Meereen. And it was all about, Dany and Jon's struggle with governance and the toll that it takes and all that stuff that book was about. And it's offset so poignantly by the Tyrion and Jorah scene at the end, where these two characters who are at sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum, completely powerless and alone and broken, contemplating the silences of Valyria. And I've said it before, like as you say, Silvana, I find these types of episodes much more satisfying where they're only cutting between 3 or 4 locations rather than 7 or 8. So we get time to flesh out the detail of the world, and because they're not constantly cutting, you become much more engrossed in what's happening on screen, to the point where, the troubles of King's Landing and Dawn and Braavos just kind of fade into white noise, which is what the experience of reading the books was like for me. I guess some people have argued it's a bit of a table-setting episode. A lot of plans are set up that won't necessarily be paid off until later in the season. But on like a writing and a pacing level, I agree. Yeah, I thought it was just top-notch. So I'll probably give it 4.5 lemon cakes. You got to leave a bit of room for like the barnstorming episodes towards the end. But yeah, I agree with you guys. Very impressive episode. But let's get into it. We'll go by location and just talk about all the different scenes in this episode. Starting with Meereen, I think. I think we ended with Meereen last episode. Well, let's start with it here. So, kicking off from last week's explosive events, in response to the murder of Sir Barristan, Dany rounds up the leaders of each of Meereen's great families and forces them into the catacombs at Spear Point. One leader is roasted and consumed by dragon, while the others quiver in fear. What did you guys think of this?
Fire and blood.
Yeah, fire and blood, yeah.
That's what I want to see in my Dany storyline, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, she's showing a bit of, the Targaryens' craziness, Aerys, so Dany gone Aerys. So, yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. Some people are saying that, it's totally not book Dany. I mean, she will not be, deliberately sending people, to get eaten by her dragons, but, well.
I reckon she would. I reckon if we watched the past 3 books, that's definitely the mindset she can slip into at times.
And she's angry because of Barristan.
Definitely. I think, Dany's really frightening in this scene, and it shows you how quickly she can switch from that nurturing mother sort of character to that ruthless murderer character, which I don't think we realize, how often she switches into that. Like the end of season 1 or book 1 is probably the most obvious example where she burns Mary Maztua, and it's that just complete lack of emotion, like, I will not scream, you will scream. It's the dragon side. If Dany is 2 parts, the mother and the dragon, this is definitely the dragon side.
And I also like Hisdar in this scene. He's showing some courage, I guess. I think I like this Hisdar, but rather than the book Hisdar.
Yeah, I agree. He's much more sympathetic and sort of calm and patient.
I like how Hisdar was, he sort of stood firm and then he was being brave, but I do also like how he admits later, oh no, I was terrified, I just didn't want to die like a coward. Like, that was very humanizing and very sort of... a nice touch on the writers.
Definitely, because in the books he feels like a really sleazy sort of politician. Everyone from all sides are trying to manipulate Dany, but here it's like, this is just a person. He's afraid he's going to die. You know, if you'd come to that scene without any other prior knowledge of the show, Dany is the monster in that scene, and this poor Hisdar is the sympathetic hero.
Yeah. I remember Dany, every time she remembers Hisdar in the books, she always said, oh, Hisdar of the tepid kisses. But now, I mean, in the TV show, better opinion of him.
Well, Dany's very passionate, and Hisdar's very calculating and just level-headed, I guess, is probably the best way to describe him. But we get the reaction to Barristan. I still don't know what to think about him dying, because I really like his scenes towards the end of A Dance of Dragons, him binding up the city, reverting the city, tearing itself apart. But I thought it was interesting, Dany's grief kind of just numbs her to sympathy and reason, which is kind of what we see, at the end of book 1 again. Her grief over the death of her child, it brings out the dragon side of her, the fire and blood side of her. It justifies that sort of violent, murderous rage, which I think is definitely a theme for Daenerys' character arc.
I'm also pretty sad that we missed out on the... That's probably one of my favourite scenes in the series, is when Barristan goes to arrest Hisdar, because it parallels Ned quite well, doing the sort of irrationally honourable thing and just marching in there to arrest himself. And I remember reading it, I was very tense, sort of worried. Game of Thrones had been desensitized to sort of expecting the hero to win because he's the hero. But then Barristan just threw down and just straight murdered Hisdar's bodyguard, and that stuck out for me. It's one of my favourite scenes.
Yeah, definitely. And what's interesting about that scene is he thinks as he's leading the king away in handcuffs or whatever it is, he thinks, I used to be a Kingsguard, what am I now? So there's an interesting kind of conflict of identity, even though we get only 4 chapters with Barristan. There's a cool little conflict that he goes through. I think my favourite line in the books with Barristan is I think Shave Pate says, would you break the Queen's peace? And he's like, I would shatter it. It's like, hell yeah. I just imagine the Batman theme screaming over the soundtrack at that point.
Yes.
But it is interesting because the final bit of counsel, probably the only bit of counsel that Barristan's been allowed to give Dany on the show, was to caution the Mad King is part of your heritage. That insanity is in your veins, and you need to resist that. You need to sue for peace. You need to be a good ruler. You need to govern wisely. And then as soon as he dies, it's like that piece of counsel it dies with him, and she goes into full fire and blood mode. And she's definitely that look of sort of lust on her eyes as she's watching Drogo, as one of the Viserion or Rhaegal or whatever the dragon is, as he's devouring that screaming noble. It felt very Mad King to me, as she's just kind of reveling in the horror before her and the power that she feels.
It was... How they did it was good. The book was better, but Barristan in the show was completely fine and enjoyable as a sort of by itself.
And there is an impact to it in terms of what Dany is having to go through. But yeah, let's move on to the other half of the Meereen storyline. So Melisandre nurses the wounded Grey Worm back to health, and he admits his love to her. In a bid to restore order to Meereen, Dany agrees to reopen the fighting pits, but to free men only, and also to wed Hisdar zo Loraq as a symbol of her respect for their culture. So what do you guys think of the Melisandre Grey Worm love plot?
Well, I think the first
it's not very popular in the fandom, I know.
Yeah, the first thing I was thinking is that, this one thinks you are too old for her. Yeah, I'm still imagining, Melisandre, the amber-eyed child from the, Nod?
Yeah.
But we kind of, we already predicted this scene anyway. It's all over in the previews and the teasers. So, yeah, okay. I mean, they need a bit of romance this season, so why not?
I'm just entirely uninterested. I don't dislike it. It's just incredibly boring to me.
Yeah, I guess I like the scenes, maybe in like an abstract way. I mean, I don't dislike it. It's fine. Like, there's far worse stuff in the show. But I guess I like it because I feel like it's important that you actually show the perspective of the former slaves and what they're actually going through. Because Dany's storyline is, in the books it's big and bold, and she's this hero to these people, and she's protecting the weak and defeating the wicked. It's, it's very exciting on a macro level, and it has all these geopolitical implications. But Martin never really explored how the slaves are actually responding to that. So I think Melisandre and Grey Worm are an interesting microcosm of that, and we see, I guess, how they're sort of recovering psychologically, and how they're figuring out how they're like people in their own right, and they have their own thoughts and desires outside of what Dany wants. So I don't know, I kind of enjoyed it through that lens.
Yeah, I guess I'll amend my statement. I like them as characters, but the romantic subplot is the thing I'm just uninterested in. But yeah, I do enjoy seeing the screen time for them both, and I think Grey Worm's. I was sort of hesitant with the casting of Grey Worm's actor for the first couple episodes he was in, but I've really warmed to him, and I think the actor does a great job of playing Grey Worm.
Yeah, I agree. They're really interesting characters in their own right. But yeah, the romance might not necessarily work as well as they anticipated. But I mean, it's not like full on. It's not like we're spending episode after episode with it. It is very drawn out. I think it started some point in season 4, and we're finally getting the first kiss. So it's not like Roz or anything.
And in all honesty, I know a lot of just show watchers that haven't read the books that do quite like the subplot. Most of the backlash I've noticed is from book readers that are probably more angry at the change than angry at the actual romance in absolute terms.
Yeah, and it might also be a response to that terrible final scene of season 3 where it's just Dany the white dot in a sea of brown. Like, it's kind of saying, there are other, we're actually going to give a voice to these other non-white characters. There are other human beings in this world. It's not just Dany the white savior, colonizing all the wicked savages.
They have better things to do than hold up their white master sort of thing.
They don't exist solely to react to Dany's awesomeness. But yeah, I guess back to Dany, she counsels with Melisandre, and she realizes she's probably gone too far, that she should probably have heeded Barristan's advice, that there is a sort of a madness and a bloodlust in her veins, and she needs to restrain that. It almost sort of goes back to the title of the episode, Kill the Boy, because that is almost a childish, juvenile instinct to just burn everything just to get your own way. It's a very short-term solution. An adult, I guess, sees the bigger picture. An adult works for the greater good. She kind of has to grow up.
Yeah, and her council is just now consisted of Melisandre and Dario. Which is
the utter extremes.
Yeah, Muncie and Cersei definitely has to put a vacancy notice. Advisors needed.
I mean, when Dario is your only counsel, you basically have no counsel. I guess his Dar is the other counselor. They're kind of dual counselors. One counsels war, the other counsels peace. So that might be an interesting dynamic going forward now that they're kind of the dual sides of Dany's kind of personality. Because she loves one, but she's having to marry the other.
It's a rough situation. I wouldn't trust either of those two as advisors, personally.
Well, showed his Dar, I would definitely trust over show Dario.
Oh, would you? I think it's bad and worse, really.
Although, in a weird way, Dario is almost the most trustworthy because he's a complete snake, and you can trust a snake to be a snake. He just wants to kill everyone.
Well, yeah, no, the good thing about Dario is that he's definitely on Dany's side.
He has no ulterior motives. He just kind of lives for the moment. He's like, these people are disrespecting you. Get some. You're the boss. Discipline them.
Yeah, just ask, what would Dario do next time those locals are talking smack?
And then do not do that thing.
Theoretically, we'll be seeing Tyrion there soon, so that should fluff up the ranks with actual capable advisors.
Oh my god.
Ah, yes.
Tyrion and Dany, that'll be...
Yeah.
I can't wait for
and
that.
we already saw the pictures anyway. Tyrion sitting right next to, I think his Dar, Dany.
Well,
in the bed.
It looks like the same scene where she gets absconded by Drogon, so it might not last that long.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope they do that. That would be amazing.
Tyrion's like, God damn it.
So what do you guys think about the marriage proposal? In the books, it was not Danny's idea, but they make it Danny's idea in the show.
I actually think both John and Danny they've made seem less juvenile because it's actually their decision. They haven't been manipulated into these things. Mm-hmm. Danny thinks about it. She takes counsel. Melisandre says, sometimes you take counsel, sometimes you see a better way. And this is probably that better way. I mean, what is the alternative? As Dario says, fall back to the pyramid and then go through guerrilla style and just kill everyone who might be an enemy. And she knows, even though she might want to do that in her blood, she knows that's a child's way. She knows she's a ruler. She has to decide what kind of ruler she wants to be, how she wants to be perceived. This is her test run, I guess, for the Seven Kingdoms. So, yeah, she knows she has to make peace. Peace is what a ruler should always aim for.
Yeah, but my friend said that it's a bit out of the blue, actually, the marriage proposal or the idea. Unless if somebody already mentioned it in passing in previous episodes, then it won't be too surprising. But suddenly, I mean, yeah.
That is true. Like, I feel like she could have just said the fighting pits. Like, did she have to give away her hand in marriage as well? Like, that's a pretty big move. Mm-hmm. It undermines her attempts to go to the Seven Kingdoms. So it probably, a lot of show watchers are like, wait a minute, why'd she do that? Couldn't she just give them the fighting pits? Because the fighting pits is a good idea, as Histar says. It creates a distraction. It creates a narrative to bind up these warring tribes in Meereen.
Yeah. And Histar is obviously very surprised. I mean, my goodness. He's kneeling for his life, and then suddenly, okay, I'm gonna marry you now.
I've already got a suitor on my knees. That was a pretty boss line. You danced. It
was a real turnaround for Histar. He really lucked out, all things considered.
Yeah, it's a whiplash. One day he's getting ready to be eaten by a dragon, the next day he's king of Meereen.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of thinking. I guess we don't really know what Danny's intentions are in the show, because we know in the books she's kind of getting sucked in for the long term. She keeps thinking about the Seven Kingdoms and how that dream is slowly slipping away. But I heard a theory that maybe Histar could be like the king of Meereen if they set it up properly. I guess that can't really happen in the books because he is arrested by Barristan. He is a bit of a sleazebag. But this Histar I could actually see becoming a king, and by marrying him, she kind of legitimizes him. So maybe that's the kind of shortcut that they use on the show, that once she set everything up, she's broken slavery in the city. They're probably not going to have all the wars outside the walls with Yunkai and Astapor and all that. But once she's defeated the Sons of the Harpy, outlawed slavery, she might be able to leave the city in Hisdar's hands if he proves himself to be worthy.
Yeah, I agree.
Still don't trust Histar, but
I know.
I actually kind of think that Book Hisdar's innocent and that Barristan arrested him incorrectly, but still don't, on an objective level, it's hard to trust a former master of a slave lord family.
I just think he's a sleazy leader of a noble house. I think he's a patsy, probably in the Locust scam. He's way too conveniently placed to be implicated in that crime for him to have any part in it. But I definitely don't trust him to rule Meereen. Especially when you see after Danny gets taken away and he's carved a decadent golden dragon throne to sit beside him, and he's changed it so he's now being called the most magnificent, those titles again. So it seems to be a vanity project for him.
Who wouldn't do that if they got in a position of power? It's first on everyone's to-do list, right?
Tick. Yeah, cross that off the list. Any more to say on Meereen?
No, not for me.
Okay, let's move on to the wall. So, Jon tells Tormund that he is willing to allow the wildlings passage south of the wall and to give them lands to settle, and in exchange they will help him man the wall and fight alongside the Night's Watch once winter arrives. Tormund reveals that most of the wildlings will be gathering at Hardhome, and that they will need to travel by ship to rescue them, and that Jon himself will need to come to prove it's no trick. When Jon reveals his plans to the Night's Watch, there is outrage. Ollie and Ed both speak out against making peace with those who slaughtered their kin. Jon argues that they must put the past behind them, and that every wildling that they don't rescue will become a soldier of the enemy. The true enemy. The only enemy that matters. So what do you guys think of the wall this episode?
Well, now that Stannis has left it, it's as good as it'll ever get, but aside from that...
they lost some good characters, but yeah, I was happy with it. Again, it's kind of like Danny. Jon is having to make these really tough decisions, and you really feel the weight of that burden just when he's by himself in his little chambers and he's leaning against the desk. It's a tough racket, I guess, being a leader.
Somebody written it to Oli in the show notes. I think, yeah.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, I mean, well, everyone is saying that. I think we're going to see him. I mean, even a more interesting character than Bobo and Mars when he stabbed John at the end. So, yep, that is definitely going to happen. And we get a lot of, I think, gems here. Stannis the Grammar King.
Yes.
and it's
beast.
apparently a repetition of a scene, similar scene actually with Davos in season 2, where I think Davos said, 4 less fingers, and then Stannis said fewer, and Davos was like, pardon? So it's the same.
Yeah, I like
almost
that. That's the scene that I thought of when he's saying, call him Sir Jaime Lannister. If nothing else, the man's a knight. But I think this scene kind of, again, it sort of humanizes him in this really tiny way because he's rigid, where he's sort of correcting people. He's very stubborn about those little details.
Yeah.
But when Davos says, what was that? He says, oh, nothing. And to me, that was almost like he's almost aware of how stubborn he is. And he's actually trying to be a bit more flexible. Like he knows that about himself and he's trying to change a little bit, which is sort of cute.
Yeah, grinding his teeth and just like,
Like he's becoming a more mellow kind of person.
Oh, and the speech, obviously, from Master Aemon is also one of the highlights, I think, in the episode. Kill the boy speech. I know one of my friends, he's very, very, he likes, I think my Master Aemon is his favorite character of them all. And he really likes this speech, so he's very happy in watching. It got translated into the screen very well. And also we got Old Town and Citadel mentioned in the episode, which brings the hope for me that Sam will go to Old Town.
Oh my god, can Brian Cogman just like write every episode? Because he's always course correcting the show back towards the books. He's awesome.
Yeah, that's why.
Call me.
So
Call me cynical, but I'd notice, call me a book purist even, but I did notice the 2 episodes I've liked this season so far have been not written by the showrunners. So that's, correlation doesn't imply causation, but it is there and interesting.
True, yeah. I don't know if that is purism or it's just kind of, I guess I just like hearing about all the little details of the world. It feels like we're just kind of, a lot of the time we're just jumping from plot beat to plot beat, like they're almost going too far in condensing the material. It's nice to just live in the world a little bit and just have characters talk about something other than the upcoming battle for the North or Winter. It's just like them living out their lives. Like I like that day-to-day kind of aspect of the show.
And it's what you sort of want in fantasy, is all those little tidbits and all that little world building.
Yeah, it's the world outside the plot. That's what makes it fantasy. Yeah,
because in fantasy, the world is itself a character. And when you get like writers like Cogman who just kind of sprinkle details, and it sort of, it makes everything more three-dimensional and more interesting. Like I liked the Stannis when he was talking to Sam, and he said pointed out, your father was the only person that ever defeated my brother at the Battle of Ashford. That slight callback and just sort of rounding out the world and developing all the characters connected to it.
It's a nice little wrinkle to Sam's character because we know from season 1 he has trouble with his father. He lives with that kind of self-loathing that's been instilled to him, like he's weak, he's a coward, he's fat, blah 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 blah. But on the Night's Watch he's found something else. He's found strength in other areas, and that the speech about Old Town is kind of like him possibly becoming this sort of protege to Maester Aemon and becoming his replacement on the wall. So he's etched out a new part to his life. It's not necessarily the glorious warrior that his father probably wanted him to be, but it's something equally as important.
That's what I really liked about Stannis' conversation with him. It started off with like Stannis, this warrior and strategist and man of action, like, you're Samwell Tarly, like with disbelief, like I knew your father, you're nothing like him. And then after a minute or two of chatting, Stannis is just sort of acknowledges that warriors are useful, but we also need learned men, because then that are of use, and that sort of encouraging Sam to keep reading. I think that's sort of a nice contrast to Randall Tarly, who's very much similar to Stannis, but came down on the exact opposite way for that one specific trait.
It was a nice little fatherly scene where he says, keep on reading Samwell Tarly. And it also shows that Stannis is a person that sees worth in the people that everyone else thinks are worthless, like namely Davos, this smuggler that everyone else spits on. But, Stannis sees something valuable in him, and he has proved very valuable for Stannis. So it's kind of like that's the same relationship that Jon and Sam have.
This is why Stannis is clearly the best candidate for king. Naturally.
Hey!
He's getting there. He's getting there.
King Stannis.
That's actually something. I've noticed in a few places online people have written that a lot of show watchers, when they first heard "kill the boy," a lot of people thought they were referring to Ollie for a split second, and that people that didn't know the quote from the books thought Maester Aemon was just arbitrarily recommending that Jon murder his steward.
It's kind of a meta thing, like, kill him now, Jon, because he'll kill you later.
Yeah, I wonder if that was intentional on the part of the writers, like just sort of something that's going to seem much more macabre in hindsight.
And it is that thing, this is what we see in this episode. Jon is damaging these key relationships, that his friends, it's not his enemies that are going to stab him in the back. It's not Alistair Thorne. It's Ollie and Ed. Well, I hope it's not Ed, but those are the ones who speak against him, who almost feel betrayed by his decision to let the wildlings through. And it's great. Like, it's a great sort of grey area. Both sides are perfectly justified in their arguments. Ollie and Ed have every right to hate the wildlings and be horrified by Jon's decision. And Jon, as a leader, has every right to look strategically and say, yes, the wildlings have done horrible things to us, and we've done horrible things to them, but at the end of the day, these are people. They're not monsters. We can try and forge a peace with them. That's what a good ruler would do. We can try and live side by side and end this meaningless war that we've been fighting, because the true enemy is out there. And so it's a sort of a philosophical decision, but also a practical decision on Jon's part to do this. And I think it's very impressive. Like, I think it definitely could have been done better in the books. He makes a lot of mistakes, but his overall strategy, I think, is noble. But yeah, it definitely it undermines his position. It creates enemies in the Watch, and that it destabilizes the Watch to a large extent. So yeah, it's definitely shaky ground that Jon's on at the moment.
Yeah, it's similar with Nat, I guess. They both underestimated the other players. Nat underestimated Littlefinger, and then Jon underestimated, the history, thousands of years of hatred between the wildlings and the Night's Watch. So I guess I personally think that Jon needs to prepare his ground first before making such public announcement that they're going to save all these wildlings, securing allies first, so somebody can speak, not only Sam, but the others. But apparently he didn't have time to do that. But if only he has, that kind of initiative.
Yeah, he's not enough of a politician to make those kind of moves. He just assumes, I'm the Lord Commander, they have to do what I say. But yeah, it's not that easy. It's interesting to think about other characters in the actual Seven Kingdoms, though, like Ned and Littlefinger and Cersei and all that, because they're almost playing by the game that's already there. Whereas Jon and Dany, I feel like, very much highlighted in this episode, they're actually trying to change things. Jon is trying to upset a tradition that's been going on for 5,000 years. The Night's Watch versus the Wildlings. Same with Dany. She's trying to break slavery, this thing that defines Meereen as a culture. So yeah, I find that very interesting. It's breaking, it's revolution, but it can be very bloody as well.
And Melisandre going with Stannis. What do you think? So she won't be there to resurrect Jon.
Melisandre and Cherene and Selyse and Davos. All the good characters are leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, Cherene is toast, obviously. I'm sure she gets burned by Melisandre at the end. Aww. If something bad happened to Stannis.
The fact that all the women are going with Stannis South kind of makes an interesting context for I want to say it's a clip in one of the early trailers for the whole season that shows Selyse like falling to the ground in the snow crying.
Yeah.
Sort of this is interesting. So we're on uncharted territory, but having seen that little glimpse, sort of interesting to see how it'll play out.
Sorry, maybe it's Stannis that dies. That's why she's falling into the snow, because she doesn't even like Selyse. Sorry, she doesn't even like Cherene.
Well, she probably doesn't like herself either, to be fair.
True. Or Melisandre. Maybe Melisandre dies unexpectedly and she falls to the snow. Yeah, like there's definitely... It's not going to be what we think it is. It's not going to be, Stannis v. Bolton epic battle. Stannis coming out on top. It's going to be something unexpected happens on the way there.
I'm thinking... I don't know. I want to see the sort of bait and switch that it looks like Martin's doing in the books, how Stannis appears to die, but then just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and sort of unreliable narrator is sort of implied, and Stannis ends up winning. Like, I want to see something like that, but yeah, with his wife and daughter going along with him, it would probably be pretty hard for them to pull that off. It would also be pretty hard to pull that off on the show, because unreliable narrator is kind of tricky to do in television and visual media relative to books.
I have to mention Cherene and Davos are so cute together. He's like, when the battle comes, promise me you'll protect me.
Oh.
And then Selyse comes in and ruins everything.
Give it just 2 sentences.
I was like, keep walking, Selyse, we're having a moment over here. I like the final exchange between Jon and Stannis, where he thanks him and says good luck, and yeah, it was a cool little exchange. We obviously didn't review the episode 3, but that look, that nod he gives Jon after he's just axed Janos Slynt is so epic.
I involuntarily squealed when I saw that.
I had to pause
being
just
a
to like
Stannis
steady
fan.
myself. Yeah.
It was one of my favourite scenes in the books, and to see it on screen just sort of made me giddy for a split second.
Oh, so good. Stephen Delane, just awesome casting. Definitely this season is his best work.
Yeah.
I liked his outfit, his like sort of standard plate mail-y, chain mail-y thing he's been wearing the whole time, but with the big fur trim. Sort of, he's taken his level up, and he's gotten the upgrade, and he's ready to get back out there after level grinding at the wall.
Just casts a long shadow, yeah, definitely.
He looks very sort of big and broad and Robert-like almost.
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than the normal wiry, like on the Battle of the Blackwater, he didn't have any sort of shoulder pads in his costume, and he didn't look that imposing. But now he's, with his big fur cloak, he's much more broad-shouldered and much more akin to someone like Robert.
Going back to Jon for a little bit, what do you reckon about the decision to go to Hardhome? Do you think... I think it's confirmed that we'll actually be going there?
Yeah, there will be the big battle there, I think, in episode 9 or, I don't know, 8. Yeah, it's one of the biggest set. And, well, we don't have Cotter Pike and his fleet in this show. I mean, Jon even using Stannis' ships, right? So yeah, I think it's logical to have Jon going there. But I wonder where would be the his Julius Caesar scene? Is it in Hardhome or still at the Wall after he returns?
It'll probably be when he returns and offloads all the wildlings.
Is he going to make it back with the wildlings? Because just sort of the way Stannis said, I need my ships, sort of hints at things might go wrong. And
okay, I see what you mean.
Well, also in the books, Hardhome was pretty much a shitstorm that ended badly with the things in the water and all. So is Jon being there personally going to make a difference? Or is because if it's a complete failure and he returns home to the Wall without wildlings, then all his brothers are just going to be like, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, exactly. They need a motivation to stab him.
So how they progress it is going to be interesting, given the changes.
I think the ships will be fine. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Stannis is on land at the moment. They're not going to play that big of a factor in any future campaigns.
No, I don't think it is going to be a big deal, but it seems like they're hyping it up to be, which is sort of has me thinking.
Do you guys think they've done enough to build up the threat of the White Walkers? Because that is the reason that Jon is doing all these things. And to be fair, I don't think they've really built it up as much in the books. Like, we haven't seen them since Book 3, the beginning of Book 3.
Maybe it's sort of that the scariest monster is the one that you don't see, and sort of letting us hype ourselves into a lather over how terrifying they are, rather than actually seeing them terrifying.
I guess, but if that's the case, then maybe we should hear about them from the wildlings. Maybe, Tormund should be telling Jon, you don't know what's out there. They've wiped out thousands of our people. We just haven't heard much about them. We did get that scene in episode 4, I think, of last season, where it's like the baptism ceremony of them burning Craster's children, which was so weird. It was like an alien movie or something.
Well, that's written by Brian Cockman.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
The Night King episode. The one where we were like, freaking out. Oh my god, is this a spoiler?
That was such a freak out moment. Where are we going?
So,
it's cool to see White Walkers versus the Night's Watch. Definitely, that's been teased for so long. I hope we see that in Hardhome.
rather than the Battle of the Fist of the First Men on the show, which was just like a bunch of sword noises over a black screen.
That sucked. Like, ugh. I guess maybe they didn't have a huge budget, but they could have worked around it a little bit. They could have shown the absolute devastation of that battle. But it's just like white mist a little bit, then the Night's Watch just kind of stumble out of nowhere and said, "Oh, let's go home."
Yeah, like I would have shown it like using sort of snows and mists to obscure all the like baddies.
Yeah.
Like, that's not to say I'm necessarily a better director, but that seems like it would have been the way to do it, because it sort of keeps the mystique going, and then you just see like snows go over a bunch of people and they all die.
Yeah, or even just Sam just kind of stumbling into the Maester's tent, and he just sees everyone's dead, all the ravens are dead, and he just finds one raven and manages to send it off, and then cut scene or something. Just something to emphasize the absolute massacre that this incident was. But I guess it's fine. I guess we sort of have to just gloss over those weaker aspects of the show. But yeah, I think they've got the budget now. Hopefully we'll get an awesome battle sequence, possibly in episode 9 between the Night Watch and the White Walkers.
Like, you hear the people grumble, like, the dragons are on screen, there goes their CGI budget for the next 3 episodes. Like, it's what people were doing earlier, but now we're getting like
dragons.
Big, full-on, half-grown dragons every episode, so clearly the CG budget's just no longer a factor, and they're just throwing buckets of money at animators.
Well, yeah, it's hugely successful now. They've got no excuse.
That's why they're killing characters also, to cover the CGI budget.
Your contract costs too much, Gren. We need it for the dragons.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Ian.
If HBO has enough money to put out a rap album with Snoop Dogg on it, then they can give us some more battle scenes.
Yeah, imagine if a rap starts playing over the battle at Hardhome.
They just use that to close off the Battle of Hardhome, and the credits just cut to black, and then just Snoop Dogg rapping starts up.
Just John, like, floating away in a boat, just puts on some sunglasses, turns, Hardhome just explodes.
Oh my god.
D&D just pop up with, like, giving the audience a finger. Just rolling around in money. Fandom just lights itself on fire. Alright, shall we move on to Winterfell?
Yes.
Okay. So, Brienne and Pod have reached the outskirts of Winterfell. They attempt to send a message to Sansa, should she need rescuing. At dinner, Ramsay presents Theon before Sansa, and has him apologize for killing the 2 Stark boys. Roose reveals that his new bride is with child, and Ramsay is noticeably vexed by this new threat to his inheritance. Afterwards, Roose tells his bastard that Stannis means to claim the North as his own and attack Winterfell, and asks him if he will help defend House Bolton's claim as father and son. Ramsay agrees. So yeah, what did you guys think? We only see like 2 minutes of Brienne and Pod, but I heard some speculation that... So they send a message to Sansa to tell her that, she still has friends in the North, and if she needs help to put a candle on this windowsill. And I heard speculation that might have been a trick by Ramsay, because he mentions the phrase "the North remembers" later in the episode, and it might be a trick to test Sansa's loyalty. And we also saw several episodes ago that Ramsay had captured Serwyn, which is possibly where they're staying at the moment. It's like half a day's ride from Winterfell. So, what do you guys think? Is it a trick, or are they actually getting messages to Sansa?
I think it's the real deal. I think I believe that Theon will be the one who's saving Sansa at the end, whereas in the book he's saving Jane Poole. But I honestly didn't put a lot of thinking in that scene. It's just just went by. I think it's just a filler for me. I was more excited with the next scenes, with the family dinner. The very dysfunctional family dinner, and it's just interesting because you got to see these 2 Bolton guys in action, interacting with each other, and then Ramsay being a troll. I think, I said in the show notes the Boltons are the trolls of Westeros. It's just
I like troll undersells them, like ogres, vampires. And
it's interesting. We don't know where this is going, but and I'd like to say something about Miranda. I'm starting to see a lot of some parallels between her character and Miranda Royce in the books. Well,
Really?
first, the name's the same.
Yeah,
That
true.
could not be a coincidence. And then they're kind of like, having a girl talk about the dress a bit. And then Miranda Royce in the books, she's also a cunning character. Littlefinger warned Sansa about Miranda. And both are also into the guys that Sansa was betrothed with. So Miranda likes Harry the Heir, and now Miranda wants Ramsay. So yeah, I see some parallels there.
That's true. I don't think Miranda Royce hunts people with a crossbow, though.
No.
We haven't seen
But-
it not happen,
Yeah,
so we
it can't
can't
be
confirm or
disproven.
deny.
Another thing I saw on the forums was there was a lot of mentions of mothers in this episode. Sort of coincides with Mother's Day. Miranda is talking to Sansa about her mother, how she helped her sew her dress, and Roose has a lovely little story about Ramsay's mother, and Selyse, some lovely mothering happening at the wall.
Dany too,
And Dany
feeding her children.
feeding her children, yeah.
Feeding her children with her other children.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think Sansa's being tricked. I think we're meant to possibly think that, because it is you're supposed to feel a lot of paranoia in Winterfell. Ramsay is this psychologically tricksy person, but I think Sansa's okay. I think that's where they're heading towards in the story. Brienne is getting messages out there. We know from the books that there is definitely a lot of sympathy in Winterfell for the Starks. That Stark loyalists are killing off the Boltons one by one and the Freys one by one, so I think it's okay. Did you guys notice that the place where she was meant to put the candle, if she was in trouble, was the same window that Bran fell from?
Yeah.
I was wondering if Bran might be, sowing some magic from the far north into the plotline.
Just brainwashing Brienne, and that's how she was able to make it through the swamps without drowning.
Yeah, yeah.
Divine tree power sustaining her.
Yeah, little roots popped up one by one out of nowhere to give them safe passage.
You must notice the mention of was like Maester Walken by Bruce Bolton. Because the moment this is just completely silly, but the moment I heard that, I just immediately thought of Christopher Walken in robes and just couldn't take the scene seriously from that point onwards.
If only I could do a Christopher Walken impression. Can you guys do it?
I feel any impression I could do would be overshadowed by my accent, as shown when I tried to do the Dirty Harry line on the movie roundtable. I just not good at quoting.
We need a Christopher Walken impressionist to come on. I really like the scene where Sansa is walking through the hound cages.
You know.
Because you just sense the fear as she makes her way deeper and deeper into the cages. There's a nice microcosm of her situation in Winterfell. But what did you guys think of when she gets to the end and she finds Theon quivering?
Yeah, I mean, they're bound to meet one way or the other. They're living in the same place, so. But I really like, Alfie Allen. I think he's one of the most underrated actors in the show. So I always enjoy any scene he's in. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, they're an interesting duo, Sansa and Theon. It's not something I considered beforehand, but in many respects, they're both sort of victims of, very abusive characters, Joffrey and Ramsay. So it would be sort of poetic for them to help each other out and save each other from their respective abusers and escape and redeem themselves in that way. So I think that's probably where they're heading, going the same way as the book.
Mm-hmm.
Although Brienne kind of mucks that up because she's trying to save Sansa as well. So who's going to save Sansa first? Maybe neither of them. Maybe Ramsay will just go crazy.
Maybe Stannis.
Yeah, there's the stanza shipping. They need to meet somehow.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Another redhead. Stannis loves his redheads.
Going back to Miranda and Ramsay, I just found them strutting around naked next to an open window in the north, presumably sub-zero temperatures, very creepy.
Yeah. I wonder if there's just some random cleaner just in another tower just watching this. Huh? What? Okay.
That's weird.
They're standing very close to the windows, very high up.
This place has changed since they got new management.
Wait. I think I have an explanation. Remember, Kathleen, well, in one of her first chapters in A Game of Thrones, she said that the walls are actually warm or something because they have a heat source underneath Winterfell.
Oh yeah, and Ned needs to go over the window to like air himself out.
Yeah, so maybe because they were standing, both of them were standing very near to the wall, so maybe they're looking for warmth.
How high does the hot water in the walls go up, though? Because sort of if it is geothermal, then that means they're pretty close to ground level, which kind of exacerbates the peeping Tom issues.
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't care, and they're just standing overlooking the courtyard.
Need further investigation.
Well, after last week's feathers, now we're talking about this.
At least, yeah, we're just going over the architecture of the Winterfell. Weird inconsistencies.
How do all the hot springs affect the decomposition of the feather, though? We sort of assumed that it was cold. This changes everything.
I think they speculated on the North cast that they made pipes out of like unicorn horns.
Ah, okay.
There's a nice contrast between the creepy, violent sex scene between Ramsay and Miranda and the sort of tender love scene between Grey Worm and Melisandre. Because to me, like, Ramsay is like the closest thing to like a slaver in Westeros, whereas, Melisandre and Grey Worm are like these recovering slaves. So I thought that was an interesting echo of one another. But Theon's another character who's trying to recover from slavery or redeem himself away from slavery. So I think that's an interesting theme on the show. But we'll see where it goes.
His arc's going to take him, because in the books it's sort of hinted that that's Archer's grand plan is to like use him to overturn the Kingsmoot, but the Kingsmoot apparently isn't happening in the show. So sort of where does that leave Theon? It seems like his entire arc is going to serve to be like recovering enough to aid Sansa, and then that'll just close it off. Like maybe he'll die in the escape attempt because there won't be anything left for him to do. Like, sacrifice himself to get Sansa out to Pod and Brienne, maybe?
Like, that would be the best way to end his arc, I think. Him saving Sansa is like a redemption for what he did to the Starks. And also, I guess for him, it's almost, he has to remember his name. That's how he ends in A Dance with Dragons. I don't know if they have more planned for him in the books, but that was like, there's a lot of unsatisfying plot lines in A Dance with Dragons, but that was definitely one of the satisfying ones where he says, I am Theon, don't you remember me? You have to remember your name. So hopefully we'll see something similar to that, because we don't have Asher, so it's basically Sansa. He has to admit that too. I am Theon. I'm sorry for what I did, and then, let me rescue you. I did want to mention just the shots inside Winterfell and also the wall. I just thought are really beautiful because they're very dark rooms, and they have this usually very small stone windows where this white cold light is streaming through, and there's this nice fog in the background, and the foreground have sort of silhouettes of tables and pots. So I really like the way a lot of scenes are shot. There was some nice overhead photography as well when Sansa walks up to the tower and looks up. It was nice. And also when Tyrion's looking up at the dragon. Did we talk about the dinner scene? We sort of touched on it.
Yeah, a bit, I think.
It was really, very long scene. Very much interested in the building tension through awkward silences. I thought that was, very effective screenwriting and acting. And Ramsay just kind of just reveling in making everyone uncomfortable and demonstrating his power over everyone at the dinner table, and his power to unnerve them and throw them off. And even Roose seemed to be a little off his kilter. He chastises him afterwards, but at the dinner table he's kind of, silenced by Ramsay's insanity as he was bringing out Theon, parading him in front of everyone, saying, look what I've done, look how I've psychologically broken this person. Don't you see him, Sansa? Aren't you happy? Because I couldn't figure out whether he was trying to unnerve Sansa or he genuinely thought she would be pleased to see Theon, broken down into a shell of a man.
Maybe a combination of both. And I also saw a relief on Roose's face after Ramsay finishes, with him trolling. There's a relief there. He was like, oh, okay. And then when I saw Ramsay saying that, oh, that got a bit tense.
He's a great actor. Like, he just brings so much charisma to the role.
Yep. And poor Walda. Poor fat Walda.
Aw. Yeah, she has no clue. She's just sitting there. Oh, thank you, Ramsay. That's a great comic relief in those scenes, because she's so oblivious to But yeah, it's a really interesting family dynamic, and there's almost this perverse kind of like when he says, "You are my son." And it's like this perverse echoing of what Stannis did last episode, where he's like, "You are my daughter, Cherene." And it's like, oh, wait a minute, these people are monsters. Why do I care about these people? It's like that scene in last season where it's like, "This is the North, and you will rule as my son." And you just hear the Lion King music start playing.
Yeah. Everything the snow touches is yours.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny.
No, they have a weird habit of that. Like, they'll have like a father-son moment between the Boltons and then just play like this like rousing music in the background that's sort of like, if you were watching the scene without any context, you'd assume they were the good guys. But like, oh, the Stannis character's coming to like take their home and kill them and help me defend its son.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to say like even monsters have family problems that they need to transcend and things like that. It's an interesting thing that I've never seen that in another show. Usually the bad guy is the bad guy and that's all they are. And for all intents and purposes, they are definitely the villain more than any other character in the show. You know, the conflicts at the Wall and in King's Landing and at Meereen are far more complicated. It's much more this grey area. But, you know, Roose and Ramsay are these complete villains. Stannis is very much, it's good guy Stannis versus bad guy Boltons in the North.
Stannis definitely seems to have come out under Melisandre's thumb this season. He that's been my big gripe so far, is how he sort of gets portrayed as just this one-sided, like, sort of fundamentalist that just follows his priestess's instructions. And I don't know if if it's character development or if they've just realized it's a really bad way to write the character and have just like switched it over in the night without anyone noticing. But yeah, Stannis is more unambiguously good by this point, as opposed to sort of a cat's paw for a fundamentalist.
I think it's a bit of both. Like, I think he's definitely evolved from season 2 to season 5 as he did in the books, but yeah, season 3 and 4 they definitely dropped the ball, and they're trying to right that wrong. Oh
yeah, that's a point. There's no real mention of Locke anymore. It's just sort of
I liked him.
That's
a shame.
I love
Burn
the actor.
Gorman.
He pops up everywhere, like in bits and bobs, and I like him and everything he's in, but just from an in-character perspective, Roose seems wholly unconcerned with the fact his trusted lieutenants just disappeared into the frozen north and not come back.
Yeah, you'd think that would be a catalyst for animosity between the Boltons and the Wall to mistrust Jon. But they haven't cultivated any of that bastard rivalry that we see in the books yet.
Like Ramsay seems just completely unfazed by the fact he's a bastard. He sort of accepts it, like in his dialogue with Miranda when he was talking about them getting married. He's like, I was a bastard then, now I'm a noble. Sort of like, I don't think Book Ramsay would ever admit to being a bastard unless he was like in sort of a really formal situation and he was compelled to by social norms.
Well, I think he's sort of used to being like a low-down person, like a bastard, and he trades in torture and treachery because that's what people expect of him. You know, he wasn't expecting to be, he hates the idea that he's a bastard, but he was certainly never expecting to be suddenly a highborn. And he's so used to having to use torture and horror to control people, but he's not really able to do that as openly anymore. He does have to be careful because, Sansa is an important property. He knows his father won't take any of that. He has to be politically. So he's almost doubled down on the psychological torture. He's using that much more than the violence. He's just sort of refining his psychopathy. And I also think the contrast between Roose and Ramsay is quite interesting because Roose is far less openly barbaric and flamboyant, but as we see and as he reveals in this story, he's no less cruel or monstrous. He's no less cutting in his barbs. He tortures people just as much, but he keeps it to himself. He doesn't use that as a tool for fear. He basically, he's much more cunning about it. So it's this interesting kind of contrast of maturity. These two evil people, but one is far more mature than the other, more deliberate.
I can't remember who it was, but I think it was like Theon/Reek says something in the books about how just sort of looking in Roose's eyes, you can tell he's 100 times worse than Ramsay. He's not so overt about it.
Any more to say on Winterfell?
Just want to say I really like the battle pieces showing Stannis' forces and the Bolton's forces. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, as a table setting episode, they've definitely done a lot to build up that conflict. We see Stannis marching at the end of this episode, or in the middle of this episode, and we see, Ramsay and Roose having this touching moment where he's like, I am your son, will you help me defeat Bolton? Yes, I will, father.
Yes.
So they've done good groundwork for that battle. Okay, so let's jump to our final location for the episode, the ruins of Valeria. Jorah and Tyrion take passage through the ruins of Valyria. They are awed by the sight of Drogon passing overhead, before being abruptly attacked by a mob of stone men. One grabs Tyrion and pulls him into the smoking sea, but Jorah manages to save him and drag him ashore. Feeling guilty, he cuts Tyrion's bindings. While collecting firewood, Jorah looks down at his wrist and notices a blotch of grayscale where the stone men touched him. So it's as we predicted last week, Jorah is patient zero.
Yeah, I think this is the best part of the episode. It's my favorite. Despite their changing from why not Rhoynar, why not so they make it the ruins of Valyria.
Well, I think this is a good example of how some changes are better than the books, frankly.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if it's the Rhoynar, then Tyrion has to go for all this exposition on the Turtle Wars, on the Rhoynars, on Prince Garyn, everything, the one in the world of Ice and Fire, probably. But instead, Brian Cockman, I think, wrote a very nice poem about the Doom Valyria. And apparently it is a song. It's a ballad sung during Joffrey's wedding. It's about two lovers, who's dying during the doom. So, and I really, really like the sequence in this part of the episode. And I think the Stone Man is also, it's as we expected. They're awesome. I was kind of, I said to myself before, oh my God, I hope they don't make the Stone Man, looking like the guy from Fantastic Four. God, I forgot.
Silver Surfer? Or?
No, the thing, yeah.
The Stretch Man?
Well, thank goodness they make them here very scary.
Yeah.
Especially in the scene of the Bridge of Sorrows, I guess. And yeah, Jorah is patient zero. We already predicted that. And yeah, it's a good build-up. And again, it's a great setting as well. There are a lot of, pan-out scene where you see the silhouettes of Jorah and Tyrion after the river scene, and it's really, really beautiful. So yeah. It's a great ending for this episode.
It's such a gorgeous scene. Just the way it looked, the long silences, the rocking of the boat, the smoke rising from the water. Yeah, it just feels so still and tragic and melancholic. Just the thick sadness of those ruins. And I think it's appropriate that Tyrion and Jorah are the characters who are in this place because it sort of reflects where they are in their life. They're exiled, they're lost, they've been shunned. And that's kind of what the Stone Men are. They're these creatures who've been sent away, doomed to live out their lives in what was once the greatest kingdom on Earth. But now it's just this dead place, and then they lurk in the shadows. And that's another theme that I think is in this season, these characters lurking in the shadows, coming out. The past coming back to haunt us, the Sons of the Harpy, the Faith Militant, the Wildlings behind the wall. It's these exile characters that are coming back to sow their revenge. So yeah, we do get this lovely poem that Tyrion and Jorah sing throughout as they're passing through the ruins, and I love this. Like, it's like the Sansa in the Winterfell. I could just in the Crypts of Winterfell, I could just have a whole episode of Jorah and Tyrion, slowly moving through Valyria, reciting poetry to each other. But is this a poem from the book you said, or was it invented for the show?
No, it's just mentioned in Tyrion's POV in Storm of Swords. It's one of the songs during Joffrey's wedding.
Oh, so they just mentioned the title?
Yeah, or not even a title. I don't think there's a title. So it's just like a song sung in High Valyrian by some singer.
Well, I've got the lyrics here on the forum. So it says, they held each other close and turned their backs upon the end, the hills that split asunder, and the black that ate the skies. The flames that shot so high and hot that even dragons burned would never be the final sight that fell upon their eyes. A fly upon a wall, the waves the sea wind whipped and churned, the city of 1,000 years and all that men had learned. The doom consumed it all alike, and neither of them turned. So it seems to be about these two lovers kind of embracing each other as the city burned and refusing to look at it, instead to just look at each other. So I was kind of wondering, maybe is this foreshadowing something in the show or in the storyline? The only thing I could think of was the Winterfell storyline when Theon and Jane are hugging each other as they jump off the walls of Winterfell. But maybe it's something in future books, we don't know. But it's a lovely poem, yeah.
I did like how it was used as sort of a bonding moment between Jorah and Tyrion. Because the show Jorah especially, and I'm not sure about book Jorah, but show Jorah, A, because he's acted by Ian Glenn, who's just a smooth guy, but also we see him earlier in the series, he gives Dany like all the books of stories from the Seven Kingdoms, so he's clearly quite a well-read and sort of the type of guy that enjoys this sort of history. And Tyrion's Tyrion, he's very much the same, and I like how that's the common ground they get is reciting historical poetry.
Tyrion even makes a comment like, long silences and the occasional punch in the face, the Mormont way. So, to Jorah is posed as this big dumb brute, but then you have him, reciting this piece of poetry, and it's like, no, this is actually a human being with thoughts and feelings and knowledge and a life before this and dreams and all that. And it is, it's a nice bonding moment when Tyrion says, I would clap if I could, and Jorah gives this little smile. But what did you think of the Stone Men, Joseph?
I think they had that menacing air to them. Like they weren't sort of hyped up as some silly fantasy creature. It seemed just kind of quite grounded but quite menacing. Like I may be misremembering, but I think there's a shot where they're like heading up to the bridge and you just see out of focus this silhouette just standing there. And when I saw that, that's just sort of like, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. And then it just jumps into the water.
Yeah, great moment.
The whole thing was just well shot, and watching Tyrion scramble up and down the boat while Jorah's just playing whack-a-mole with the oar. It was quite funny and tense at the same time.
Yeah, it was a good moment of panic and horror. They sort of hearkened to the White Walkers, maybe the dead coming back to haunt us. I don't know. That's sort of the closest we get to the White Walkers without actually seeing the White Walkers. These dead creatures made of stone. So I don't know if there's anything magic about them or it's just sort of disease, like a leper colony, but they did feel very zombie-like.
I think it's pretty much just leprosy.
Probably,
the like sort of fantasy leprosy that makes them into these terrifying monster-like creatures.
But does that also turn your brain to mush?
I guess. Well, it might have some sort of syphilitic effect, whereas it progresses, you just become slowly more and more crazy until you're sort of. Or maybe rabies would be another good example. How just sort of gradual degeneration and increased aggression as it progresses.
I thought the shot of Drogon flying overhead was also stunning. I think that's probably the first time this season that we've seen a bit of excitement from him since he left King's Landing. It's almost like he's found something to live for again. It's also probably one of the weirdest detox cruises ever.
Yeah, you got to wonder how much stuff Tyrion was seeing, in addition to the scary vistas, dragons, and undead stone people.
Dude, are you seeing stone men as well? Yes, run!
It's like, wow, this is hitting me harder than I thought it would. No, it's there.
I'm tripping out, man. Yeah, it was overall just a very existential scene, I thought. And I think it ties really well with Jon and Dany because it's almost like no matter what they do, this grand civilization just kind of ended in ruin. The greatest civilization the world has ever seen. They've never even been able to emulate those kinds of cities, that kind of technology, that kind of magic. And so for everything that Jon and Dany sacrifice, all the reforms they try and commit, it could just all end in ash. And or maybe the other way to look at it is maybe that's the fate that awaits them if Jon or Dany should fail, if they should become unable to stop the darkness or whatever from all rolling in.
I hadn't thought of the connection, but it's interesting that you sort of put Dany and Jon's new world they're trying to form, compare that to Valyria, because even though Valyria was quite advanced in technology and magical, that it was still a pretty shitty place as far as social policies go. Like they were horrific slavers and somewhat racist in their just desire to subjugate all the things.
True.
And sort of maybe Dany and Jon present an option that in finally doing something different, they may sort of escape the fire and death of cyclic history that Valyria went through.
Yeah, that's a good reading too. Like, if we don't change something, this is how we're going to end up. If we don't move beyond this style of living, find a new way, it's all going to end in ash. The only other thing I had to say was, just the final shot I thought was just stunning with the sun setting, just rippling over the water, reflecting the two characters. And did you guys notice that Tyrion is gazing at the sunset? He's gazing west and Jorah is gazing east. So I thought that was nice. Like they're both gazing where they want to be. They've sort of fallen through the cracks, and they're not quite there yet, but they know where they want to head.
Yeah,
And,
it's a beautiful scene.
It's a great ending scene, and so just calm, and it's not a big action moment. It's just
it's poetic.
It is kind of like it is very poetic, but it is kind of a sting in the tail when he looks down and sees the grayscale, which is kind of sad. Like I don't know. I felt really sorry for Jorah this episode.
Well, they did tease that you can halt grayscale like they did with Cherene. There might be some really clever, learned people in Meereen that can do Jorah a solid at Dany's behest.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see, I guess. Well, that concludes KrakenCast for this week. Typically, we record on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, but obviously check the forums to see if we're recording that week. You can catch the American episode reviews on Thursday with the DragonCast, and the European episodes on the weekend with the Wolfcast. So thank you for joining me, Joseph.
Thank you. It's been a blast.
And Silvana.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening. We'll see you later.